On Christmas evening, Donald Trump decided to strike Nigeria. Yes, we are looking at another war. Let's go ahead and get into it, ladies and gentlemen. So, you have been hearing a lot that Christians are under attack in Nigeria, but it's not as widespread as they want you to believe. It's not as many people as they want you to believe. Notice that you're not hearing these individuals like Donald Trump, like Nicki Minaj, like corporate media tell you that a lot of Muslims have been killed in Nigeria. So we're going to break this down, folks. I'm going to tell you what this is really all about. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that the U.S. government is not there to help you. The U.S. government is not there to help the people of Nigeria. This is done under that disguise of help in protecting Christians in Nigeria. But that's not what this comes down to. It was reported just recently. You'll notice corporate media loves to cheer on war. Listen to this.
Jessica, it was around 6 o'clock Eastern time tonight, about an hour ago, that President Trump announced that the U.S. had launched strikes inside of Nigeria, targeting and killing elements of ISIS in the northwestern part of the country. We don't know how many people were injured, how many were killed in this American strike. What we do know is President Trump says the reason the strike was launched is because he says Christians within Nigeria, as you mentioned, have been targeted. Not just over the last year, but really over the last several years.
Now, let's pause here for just a second. Remember that when Israel bombed Christian churches, there was no retaliation there. There was no, let's protect the Christians in Israel. Let's protect the Christians in Gaza. Let's protect the Christians in the West Bank coming from the Trump administration or the Biden administration. Israel has routinely done this. They have attacked Christian churches in their vicinity. So if it's really about protecting Christians, why is this not happening regardless of the country? And that's something that you really need to pay attention to. So that is a way to push back on that rhetoric from the Trump administration. That's how you know this is not about Christianity. That is something that they are using as an excuse to go in, steal resources. We're going to get into all of it, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to talk about this faction of ISIS that is in Nigeria and how they got there. Let's continue.
He broke this news on Truth Social with a pretty lengthy post. I'm going to just read to you the back half of that post. He says, quote, "I previously warned these terrorists that if they do not stop the slaughtering of Christians, there would be hell to pay. And tonight there was. The Department of War executed numerous perfect strikes. Merry Christmas to all, including the dead terrorists, of which there will be many more if their slaughter of Christians continues."
Imagine saying Merry Christmas to that. Merry Christmas to more war.
We also saw the secretary, Pete Hegseth, say, quote, that the president was clear last month. The killing of innocent Christians in Nigeria and elsewhere must end. He says the Department of War is always ready. So ISIS found out tonight on Christmas, more to come, and grateful for Nigerian government support and cooperation. We know, because we've confirmed with a Pentagon official, that the Nigerian government was working with the United States. There was approval, and they worked in conjunction on these strikes. So that is an important caveat to this story here.
Yes, they were. But that doesn't mean the U.S. is actually trying to help them. And we're going to get into that as well. Pete Hegseth says we're going to protect Christians everywhere, except for the ones in Israel, right? What about when their churches are bombed by Israel? So do you see the hypocrisy? Guys, they use a different excuse every time. They've used weapons of mass destruction. When it was Libya, they said that Gaddafi was killing his own people, so we have to go in and liberate the people. There's now a slave trade in Libya since then. This is not going to be good for Nigeria. Basically, the U.S. government is going to go in and they're going to destabilize their country, just like every other country that they touch. So if it was really about Christians, you would see this happen all over the world, regardless of the country, but it's really not about that. So let's get to the Muslim part here. I want to show you this to you guys as well. This comes from Babangida. Babangida says it's heartbreaking and true. Muslims in Nigeria cannot travel freely from southern Kaduna to Plateau without the fear of being singled out and killed simply for their faith. So he's given the Muslim perspective. The media often whitewashes these crimes, failing to name the terrorists. Rather, they shield them by calling them gunmen. Even those who murdered the ABU wedding travelers, Mangu Christian radicals, were granted bail by a court in Plateau State. The system is beyond broken. It is complicit. This is the other side of the story that you're not hearing about how Muslims are being treated there. They're only talking about the Christians, which is, again, I told you the ultimate goal is to root out Islam, to root that out completely, to uplift Christianity, more so Christians who support Israel. Because this is all a part of the greater Israel plan. It's all a part of the plan that the U.S. government 100% supports. Now, here's another thing I want to show you. Interesting how Nicki Minaj speaks out about Christians in Nigeria, yet stays silent when Muslims are killed in mosques during prayer. Human rights shouldn't depend on religion. Funny thing as well, you didn't hear Nicki Minaj say anything about the Christian churches that were bombed in Israel. This is how you know this is all BS. But yes, this happened. There was an explosion at a Nigerian mosque during prayers, and it killed several people. Let's get into this here. By the way, this was December 24th. So this was Christmas Eve of this year. And we can't show the whole video there because it shows like the wounded people, etc., which we can't show on here. So it's important that we mention both of that. Corporate media isn't diving into this. Donald Trump's not going to dive into it because it doesn't fit his agenda. His job right now is to convince you that Christians are being slaughtered in Nigeria, and this is something that the U.S. government needs to help with. It's also a dog whistle, I would say, to evangelical Christians, trying to get them back on board with supporting the pro-Israel, the Israel greater plan agenda. This is all connected. And they know that they are losing support. They know that Israel has lost support, even within the Christian community here in the United States. So all of these pieces go together. Now, it is true that the Nigerian government worked along with the Trump administration for this to happen. I want to go ahead and show you this here from the government of Nigeria. Nigeria, United States security cooperation and intelligence collaboration hits at terrorist targets in Nigeria. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria confirms that Nigerian authorities remain engaged in structured security cooperation with international partners, including the United States of America, in addressing the persistent threat of terrorism and violent extremism. This has led to precision hits on terrorist targets in Nigeria by airstrikes in the Northwest. So the government 100% help the Trump administration with these attacks. But we've seen this kind of thing happen before where they really believe that the U.S. government is trying to help them. They really believe, by they, I mean the government, not necessarily all the civilians. They really believe that the U.S. government is trying to protect them and is trying to do the right thing. And this is often where a lot of times governments in other countries make a big mistake, assuming and believing that the U.S. is operating in good faith. The U.S. government is not there to help you without getting something that is going to benefit the U.S. government. Ultimately, I think what this leads to is that the U.S. government is going to convince the Nigerian government that you need to get on board and support Israel so that they can protect you. This is one of the tricks that is used. If you get on board with us with this, we will make sure that you are protected. They don't tell you about their other plans and everything else that they want to do. Brian Berlatek called it out immediately. Donald Trump brags about bombing yet another coincidentally oil-rich nation. Nigeria claiming to strike terrorists he claims are killing Christians on Christmas, obviously for PR points, not strategic purposes. This is after inviting Al-Qaeda in Syria leader al-Jilani to the White House, who has been slaughtering Syrian Christians, Druze, and Alawites since the U.S. helped him take power under the Biden administration in late 2024. This is the part I think a lot of people who are not engaged politically day to day are not aware of. This is why I say they're protecting Christians is BS, because you literally have Jolani, who was there slaughtering Christians in Syria, and Donald Trump 100% supports and backs what he's doing. This is why you need independent media to call these things out. The terrorists in Nigeria are a direct result of the U.S. overthrow of Libya. Likewise, using Al-Qaeda terrorists, both the Obama and Biden and now Trump administration all support. Since the average Trump supporter gets their news from Fox and Breitbart or Newsmax, which has told them none of this, they are likely blissfully supporting all of these new wars, despite many voting for Trump to end America's decade-spanning global murder spree. And that was Trump there with Jolani at the White House. This guy is killing Christians in Syria. This is the BS radar, ladies and gentlemen. But a lot of people, again, if you're not watching independent media and you're only watching like corporate media, if you're only watching Fox News, you're not going to know about this. They're not going to dive into all of that. That's why independent media is so important. So it's a trick. It's a similar trick that was used about the weapons of mass destruction. When I say we have a gangster's paradise, and I say like we really have these people, a cabal of people, the wealthy and the powerful that are running things and that are calling the shots and can ultimately lead to our very destruction. This is what I'm talking about. The billionaires, which Trump is one of them. The people who go along with Jeffrey Epstein or went along with him. This whole elite bubble of people calling the shots and making decisions. And they have been fooling and tricking people for a long time. My fear with this one is I think a lot of Christians are going to fall for this one. I really do. And you need to tell them, why aren't you saying anything about the Christians being killed in Syria? Why aren't you saying anything about the Christians being killed in Israel? The churches that were bombed. Why aren't you saying anything about that? Why isn't your Lord and Savior and hero, Donald Trump, saying anything about the Christians being killed in all these other countries? That's the BS radar, guys. Now, Nico House, comrade, Nico dived into this very well. He saw it for what it was. Listen to this.
Donald Trump is considering putting boots on the ground in Nigeria. He's considering doing so allegedly because of this unique event of Christians being killed by Muslims, specifically the terrorist organization Boko Haram. Now we know that's some bullshit. We already know. However, there's also been a knee-jerk reaction from anti-imperialists that insists that this is strictly about gold and oil. And I'm here to tell you it's a little bit more complicated than that. First of all, let me be clear. This idea that Christians are being killed and therefore that should be a valid excuse for us to invade Nigeria is bullshit. Because despite what people might believe, although Christians have been killed over the last several years, there have been more Muslims killed in Nigeria than Christians. And the Trump administration, nor any Western institution, has had anything to say about it.
And you don't hear Nicki Minaj saying anything about that. So pay close attention, folks.
The fact of the matter is, Christians from the South and Muslims from the North have been beefing in Nigeria since at least the 90s, non-stop. And Boko Haram, the terrorist organization responsible for killing both Christians and Muslims in Nigeria, was funded and financed by the U.S. We already know. So now that we know that this really has nothing to do with Christianity or protecting Christians, we can go and address the other part, which is it must be about oil and gold.
So we're seeing another example of the U.S. government funding direct conflict in another country. We've seen this happen time and time again. So this is the part where I think, again, a lot of people are missing. We got to go in and we got to stop those terrorists. We got to stop that group that we created, that we funded. Don't forget, without the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, you don't have an ISIS. I continue to tell people the U.S. intervention ideology, the strategy, the policy, it leads to more destruction in those countries, oftentimes more destruction than they had prior to U.S. intervention. So it just over and over again, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, in 2024, Nigeria sent out about $58 billion in oil exports, principally to the United States, France, and Italy. And the reason why the oil, the gold, and other natural resources are going to states that are basically trying to invade Nigeria right now, especially the United States, is because Nigeria already has a U.S. puppet government in place, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all don't know about Tinubu, Mr. Falsify my college degree with a fake ass name, drug lord from Chicago who somehow became the president of Nigeria? Yeah, do some research on that guy.
Another Western installed puppet. So they get these governments in these countries to go along with U.S. imperialism and U.S., war. And so the public who's not engaged in foreign policy, like I think a lot of you are that watch this show and Nico and others, they just assume that, well, if that's what the government wants to do, if they want the U.S. to help, what's the big deal? What are we complaining about? They don't have the time or the energy a lot of times to research who these leaders are in these other countries, to see that these are people who were installed by the West to do their bidding. That's why the government goes along with what the U.S. wants to do.
So now the question remains, why the hell would the United States want to overthrow their own puppet government? Well, the truth is, they don't want to overthrow the puppet government. They specifically need boots on the ground. They specifically need a base of operation. And it's not necessarily because of what's in Nigeria, but because of the countries surrounding Nigeria. Namely, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
And what is very important about Niger right now? Let me show you in just a second. We're going to come out. I'm going to show you something. We'll come back to that video. Let me show you what Niger just did. Niger issues a total and complete ban on issue of visa to all U.S. citizens and an indefinite ban on entry for nationals of the United States. This is an urgent retaliation to the U.S. Niger suspends access to its territory for American nationals. Access to its territory for American nationals. Based on the principle of reciprocity, this decision is part of a dynamic of affirming national sovereignty and translates Niami's assumed evolution in the conduct of his diplomatic policy. Sorry, I can't talk today. So that was just announced. They are not playing around. So Niger, and remember Burkina Faso, we all have talked about Burkina Faso multiple times where they said the American and the French, get out of our country. We're going to run our own country. You're not going to have anything to do with this. We've talked about what's happening in Burkina Faso. So it's very clear what's happening here. And there's Nigeria. Let's continue.
Otherwise known as the AES. In case you haven't been paying attention over the last couple of years, the AES was successfully able to kick out France and NATO powers. And they've been able to successfully repel all of the terrorist threats that basically NATO funded to overthrow the governments that took back their governments from the Western NATO powers. They've been able to do so by creating a union amongst the three: political, economic, and military union. A union that has, by the way, resulted in France crumbling to such a degree that they've had 525,600 prime ministers in the last 5 years because of the economic failures brought about by the fact they can no longer rob the AES states of their resources. These AES states, these Sahel states, have begun to diversify their economy, strengthen their military, and even partner with countries like Russia and China.
And that's why the US government wants to have the boots on the ground in Nigeria so that they can go into those countries and they can destabilize them and take over. Any country that doesn't go along with the West and the Western agenda is ultimately a target. And that's what a lot of this is really about. Now, they couldn't just say, we're going to go into Nigeria, we're going to bomb Nigeria, we're going to go in and do this. So they come up with a reason. So the reason that they use is there's all these Christians that are being killed in Nigeria. But to Nico's point, there's more Muslims that are being killed in Nigeria than Christians. So what is it really all about? And if it's really about Christians, why are they okay with Jolani killing Christians in Syria? Why are they okay with Israel bombing Christian churches? This is the piece that is missing from the puzzle that corporate media isn't going to tell you. It's very important, guys.
To take back control. And although Nigeria is firmly in the control of the United States currently, we don't know how long that will last, because I'm sure Nigerians are looking over across the border like, man, it's looking kind of cool over there, man. You telling me the people are actually in control of their economy? The government is actually working on behalf of the people, and the resources of their nations are actually being used to better the livelihood of the people who live there? And I'm sure they give in to Tinubu and that puppet government the side I write about now. And since the United States can no longer set up shop in the Sahel states, and there is no legitimate reason to overthrow the Nigerian government because that's already a U.S. puppet government, well, we got to say Christians are dying all of a sudden because we don't really have any other excuse. We really just need to take back control of these countries.
Yeah. And that's what this is all about. And that's how they're going to sell this war to the American people. And they're going to tell you, we got to just get boots on the ground because we got to go save them and protect them. And a lot of people are falling for it. Even this guy right here, he sees the BS. Listen to this.
Trump just bombed Nigeria and everyone is misreporting it. That's because this is about one thing and one thing only. It is Nigeria's resources. It is not about Christian genocide. That didn't happen. It is not about ISIL. America has funded ISIL at times. America works with the people that fund ISIL, and America is interrupting the operations that actually undermine ISIL in Nigeria, the Nigerian government. Because let's be clear, bombing Nigeria, even if there are terrorists that the Nigerian government is fighting, is illegal, both under federal and international law. And this is not about protecting Christians, because even the Christians in Nigeria, by and large, do not support American intervention, which still kill Christians.
This is another example of a government not doing the will of the people. This is why I said, when I say Nigeria, we're talking about the Nigerian government. We're not talking about the Nigerian civilians. And that's important for people to understand. So when you install the government that you want, it's easy to get them to go along with your agenda. There's a lot of puppets walking around throughout the world.
I'm well beyond justifying why there is no justification for this. But what I want you to learn from this, the very clear line that a justifying narrative spread for the past year by motherfuckers like Bill Maher, and then taken up by the right-wing mainstream of a Christian genocide in Nigeria, which was never happening, and no international human rights organization agrees with, directly led to people being killed by American bombs. It is important that we undermine these myths that are used very quickly by every single liberal and conservative mainstream institution to justify violating the sovereignty of another nation, killing its citizens, very clearly to steal its resources, something America and the West has done 4 times over in Nigeria as they funded coup after coup after coup after
coup. So it's hilarious to me that Donald Trump shouldn't even be able to say, remember when he told you there was a genocide against white people, the South African, the Afrikaners? Remember when he told you there was a genocide against white people in South Africa, and that's why he was bringing them here over to the United States? This government and the one before it greatly fund a genocide against the Palestinian people. As I just reported the other day, Palestinians are still being killed. There is no ceasefire. So it's all a game. And they are pretty successful at playing this game. So if you think that the US government just bombed Nigeria because they care about the Christians, you're being fooled. You're being fooled. Pass this along to your friends. Wake up, everybody. They always come up with a different reason. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.